Hello, I'm Dr. Ron England, coming to you from Daytona State College, and this is CEN3722, Human-Computer Interaction, and today we're going to talk about usability evaluation. So the bottom line is we've gone through the design process, which is design, prototype, and evaluate. Well, guess what? We're on evaluate. So let's look at what we mean by both usability and evaluation of usability, and look at what we're trying to achieve with usability evaluation. This is a very important step in the overall process of creating a design. And it's important because when you're dealing with big systems, you've not only got to be able to go through that whole build process and prototyping process, but you've really got to have some solid quantitative evidence that your design is a good design. So we're going to look at that. Now, part of usability is really an understanding of the principles of usability. The three fundamental principles of usability being learnability, flexibility, and robustness. As part of the process, you've also got to be able to write a set of specifications by which you're going to use to evaluate the usability of a design. So you're going to need to have that capability of doing that. The last little bit is being able to know the different techniques that you're going to use in the usability evaluation methods, besides writing those evaluation processes. But when you have access to users or you don't have access to users or a system is in a different state of design, you need to know the different evaluation methods that are available to you and be able to apply the correct evaluation methods to get the objectives of where you want to be with your usability evaluation. The bottom line of usability evaluation is you want a better design in the end, and the ability to evaluate those designs is going to be crucial to you. So, first, let's talk about usability. Now, that is a loaded term because usability means a lot of things to different people. The question that you've asked and people have asked you about computer systems, is it user-friendly? Well, remember, one man's trash is another man's treasure. Something that you may think is completely user-friendly to another person might not be. But as a designer, you've got to know that. You've got to know that different classes of users may see the system in different ways. And you've got to be able to evaluate that level of usability amongst your different groups of users. So let's think of usability evaluation as that debug phase for the design. The first major thing that you've got to do is take care of really design flaws, things that just don't make sense to the users to make it a usable system. So we want to know how usable the system is, how functional the system is. But you know, the bottom line of systems is that users can use them and be happy with using them to perform a specific task. So you've got to get to that part, that place. Now, this needs to be done all throughout the design process. Remember, it's design, prototype, evaluate. So the evaluation phase isn't at the end, it's along the process. Each iterative portion of this is going to require an evaluation phase. And we've got lots of different techniques that you can do to perform this evaluation. And remember, we're really talking about getting good, solid quantitative data collected on a system so that we actually have documentation of the evaluation of the system. These techniques are not mutually exclusive. You can use multiple evaluation techniques to get the job done. In the end, you should know what problems your design has, what priorities that you've had, and what are the severities associated with the different flaws that you might have or different issues you might have with your design. So we want to get to that step, and we want to get to that step in a well-documented fashion. So let's look at some of the methods. We have some very solid techniques, such as scenario, thinking aloud, user observations. These are all very good methods. But before we go into the methods, we really need to look at the principles. What is it in the end that we are using as part of this evaluation? So let's look at these principles themselves. 3 fundamental principles of usability evaluation: Learnability, flexibility, robustness. Learnability. Can your user use the system? Can they learn to use the system? Okay. Is it something that a user can use? And remember, different systems are different. Some systems, you simply have to have the user have the ability to pick it up and go. And other systems are going to require training for more complex tasks. Flexibility. Where and how can they use this system? What can they actually achieve? Is the system flexible enough to allow them to achieve a lot of different goals and a lot of the different ways that they're going to want to achieve these goals? And robustness. Errors are going to happen. Okay? Can you recover from those errors? Does it handle a lot of different types of scenarios seamlessly and without real problems? That robustness. So we're going to kind of go into a little bit more depth when we talk about these three: learnability, flexibility, robustness. Learnability. Now, when you are learning something and you want to be able to learn something fast, you want to be able to say, if I do this, this will happen. That's a level of predictability in the system. You want to know what's going to occur. Also, you want to know how you got to where you are. You don't want to be in some screen in a system and go, I have no idea how I got here. That ability to synthesize the process that it took you to get to a specific location or screen within a system. You want to feel a level of familiarity. Does the system make you comfortable? Does it look like other systems? Do you have that comfort with how you're interacting with it? Can I take knowledge I have from other systems and generalize that knowledge to help me learn this system? And does the system just simply behave in a consistent fashion? If I do A, B happens. If I do A, B happens. If I do A, oh my God, what happened? No, consistency. Flexibility is, I am going to use this system to do many things. You design a system for specific purposes and tasks, but you are not going to be able to foresee every specific situation or scenario that could possibly occur with your system. Can you deal with those systems? Can the user deal with those systems? Can multiple users deal with those systems? Can multiple users deal with those systems at the same time? That multi-threading capability. Okay, can I migrate? Oh, I've got this task here that I've been doing, but now that task has changed a little bit to B. Can I still use the system to do that other thing? Can I work the way that I want to work? If I want to work in a specific set of units, can I work in that set of units versus another set of units? If I want to work with a specific language, can I work with that type of language? And can I make the system work the way I want it to work? Can I actually have a system where my favorite screens are right there and available to me that I can customize for that? Or even better, can the system customize itself knowing what I do? Okay, those are all simple, those are learnability, flexibility, part of the whole process of assessing how good the design is. The last one being robustness. And robustness is also important. Is it visible to me what I'm doing in the system? Okay, do I know how it got to its specific state? Okay, do I know how to get back to the state, just like you had in the learnability, but in this case, in the robustness? Do I actually know? Do I have a way of knowing? Can I just walk into a system blind and be able to figure out where I'm at and how it works? Okay, and if something happens, okay, mistakes are made. Can I recover from those mistakes using the system? Do I have to call for support to do that, to get that help to recover from the situation? Okay, that is a level of robustness. Okay, I don't want to have to call technical support to have them fix it for me. I want it to work. Okay, is it responsive? Responsiveness. Time responsiveness. If something takes 7 seconds, that's about how much time you've got before a user is going to walk away from a system. If it takes 20 or 30 seconds, they're gone. It's got to work the way they expect it to work in the time frame that they expect it to occur. Okay, and does it really do the tasks it's designed to do the way those tasks are designed to be done? Do you end up with the final end task completion the way it should be? Those are all accessible. all of these. So let's look at now how to write a usability specification. Okay, I want to say this system is usable if it meets these specific requirements. I'm going to write a set of specifications to do this. So what can we put in that set of specifications? I'm going to take you through a couple of very basic user specifications. So let's look at this one. Let's just say I've got some specific principles of usability that I want to measure. I want to measure, is it responsive to the user in the fashion that they want it to be? That is a concept that I wish to measure. So I need to have a method by which I'm going to measure that. And I've got to have specific states and scenarios of, is this good or bad? So let's look at those different states. The concept or the usability attribute that we're measuring is what we wish to measure. We have to have a method to do that. Are we going to measure it by amount of time, by user satisfaction, by whether the users got lost, those types of things. You have a current level of performance, that's your baseline, and then you've got, well, where do I wish to be in that level of performance or level of satisfaction? And then I've got worst case and best case scenarios. What's the worst thing that can happen? What's the best thing that can happen? So let's take, for example, I make phone calls, and a lot of times I have to dial a number. And right now with my phone, nice little Android phone, between the swipe to get to the phone, to get to the user interface for a dialing, it takes me on average 22 seconds to get a phone number out. Well, I'd like to create a shortcut that simply gets me to the keypad access and does things relatively fast. In fact, even give me a bigger keypad so that I can do it very rapidly. I've got a usability specification. My usability is going to be quicker access to the keypad. That is a good something that I can measure. And the way that I'm going to measure it is amount of time. I've got a current state and I've got a planned state, somewhere where I want to be, 22 seconds to do it versus 10 seconds to do it. And I've got a worst case scenario. My worst case scenario is that it doesn't work, it doesn't save me any time, in which case I just go back to where my current state is. And my best case scenario is that I actually am able to exceed my targets, or I can meet the planned targets in every specific situation. That is a usability specification. I have something that I'm measuring it, a way to measure it, and I've got targets. So, when you're writing these usability specifications, you've got to know, well, first, what are some measurement levels that I can use? How can I set these? Well, you can always set them based on the fact that a user doesn't have to use your system at all. And if your system doesn't provide an improvement over what they're currently doing, there's no incentive to use the system. So that in itself is a measurement level. But you can also look at competing systems. You can look at your own system in its current state. Okay? These are all measurable. Important that they're measurable. You can say we've either gotten better or we've gotten worse. So we put this together into a usability matrix, or we can put it together in something that can give us an actual set of written, final documentation of how well we've met these aspects of the usability. So, for example, if my objective is the suitability to the task, I've got things that I can measure for the effectiveness, for the efficiency, and for the satisfaction. I have a way of measuring these things, and I can measure a current state versus I can measure where I am to where I would like to be when I put the system design together. And I know if I've improved. That is the important aspect of the assessment, that you can actually get some quantifiable data. So what are some of the different types of metrics that I can use? Well, there's lots of different kinds of metrics that you can use. This is just a sample of them. In my case, it was just the time to complete the task. On my phone example, I wanted to be able to dial faster without having to go through so many steps, create a shortcut, and I either saved time or I didn't save time. But there's a lot of different ways to things that you can look at. So for a complex task that has lots of calls to the help desk, a redesign and then seeing if it changes the number of calls to the help desk right there. That is something that is a usability metric. And the usability metric actually should obviously follow the usability thing that you're looking at. So you get the results, and the results should identify issues or problems that you need to do. And you're going to have to be able to set a set of priorities by which you can say, these need to be addressed and these don't need to be addressed. And that is part of the process. So a level of severity is going to be important. We're going to talk about severity a little bit later. But let's look at some of the techniques now that we've got that are what we call the discount usability techniques for actually doing these measures, going out and doing this assessment. So one of the techniques of doing user assessment is simply observe the user. Look at them, watch them, tape them, okay, take notes. Now I've done this a lot of times, and I had this one system that I wrote, and the first page of the system had a single button. That was the only thing on it. It said, it was enter the system, okay? It was a splash screen, but we didn't want to go right into the screens that were there. We wanted to say, okay, I want you to hit this button to confirm that you are actually a real user and that you're entering the system itself. And we put it in front of test gates, and I'm like, why do we even need to put this in front of test users? Because who would this confuse? We found that 80% of the users clicked everywhere but the button. It's like, that makes no sense. Why are they clicking all over the screen? There's only one button. Okay. We solved that problem by now putting a couple of red arrows. Click here to get started. There's the button. Well, we helped our system because now only about 20% of the users wouldn't click the button. 80% of the users did, and we had a definitive improvement. We got this from observing the users. It's like, well, why are 1 in 5 users still not clicking? There's only one button. Why are they still doing this? Well, we actually solved the problem by technique number 2, which is the thinking aloud. And in the thinking aloud, you put a user behind the system and you just tell them, tell us what you're thinking. Talk aloud. Talk your way through what you're doing with the system. So we got an idea of the thought process. And the thought process for these users was simple. They didn't know why they needed to click that button. We as designers had decided we needed to have an entry screen that you click on a single button to get moving into the system so that the screen didn't start with the system. The system is a confidential system, so you needed to have some sort of buffer. Okay. We didn't tell them that, though. We just had to click here. Once they knew, they didn't have any problems with that. So they solved it. Now, as you're working through and figuring out, okay, here's the things that are going on, you're going to have to do some evaluation of the severity of what are the problems I really need to solve. This isn't really that tremendously difficult to do. If something affects a large number of users and it affects them in a way that really keeps them from doing the tasks that they need to do or just makes them miserable, that's a high severity. Large number of users, high impact. And that is a very easy way to look at and prioritize what you've got to do. So that's a good way to measure the severity. And when you're working with users, that's something that you will definitely be doing, is looking at the severity of the problems that come up. Obviously, if the users can't even get into the system because they won't click on the one button there, it was a severe problem that needed to be solved, but it was solved. Now, we're going to go through some other techniques like heuristic evaluation. Heuristic evaluation is saying, I'm going to take a specific rule of thumb, usability principle, and we're going to look to see how well our system meets that usability principle by using a group of people that have some expertise in the area and having them evaluate it. So, for example, I would tell you, I want you to look at the system and I want you to evaluate it on how well it uses recognition over recall, or how well it uses consistency to a specific standard. And you as a group of experts go forth and you start using the system and you set up we have a scale and you work through the interface and you come up with your results. And I aggregate those results and I use that to say, wow, we're either doing a good job or we're doing a poor job of meeting these specific standards. That's a heuristic evaluation. It's heuristic in that it depends upon the judgment of the individual expert users or expert designers. The other one that does the same thing is what we call the cognitive walkthrough. And this one's normally done in the case of a heuristic evaluation. You let the designers work independently of each other. However, in a cognitive walkthrough, you can actually work as a team. And a cognitive walkthrough is you go through the system, you work through the tasks, and then the team asks the question, why does a user do this? Why would a user click this button? Why would a user need to, so all those, it's the why. And you want to record the whys, but this is a group of experts that are working through this, okay? But it does give you good feedback because you really have to delve into the design itself to understand the whys, not just the hows, but the whys. The other one, which is also, again, we've talked about these in the past, the concept of a scenario. But we talked about a scenario in prototyping. You develop a scenario and you prototype a system that will allow the users to handle the specific scenario. Okay? Realizing that multiple scenarios may go into a specific interface. Okay? Because a scenario is a specific set of circumstances that occur. Okay, now, let's look at scenario, however, from the aspect of assessment. So, you take the same scenario, and then you look at, here's my specific scenario, here's you, the hotel clerk that has to perform a specific task. Can you do this task? Are you capable of, underneath a certain design that you've got, complete the task that you have in the scenario? So from the prototyping side and the design side, a scenario helps you develop a design, and multiple scenarios are used together to get a final design piece. In the assessment side, you go back to the scenarios that might occur or even come up with other scenarios and assess, does the design meet the scenario requirements? And when you get to this evaluation, you're going to have specific situations that you've got to occur and decide what techniques you're going to use to do this assessment. So what if you've got no system, just a prototype, and you've got no real users? Well, you're still not caught in not being able to do an actual usability evaluation. You've got heuristic and cognitive, which both deal with those capabilities. So you now have a lot of different tools at your disposal to actually evaluate the usability of systems. You have the tools to prototype the systems, and you have the tools to evaluate, and you have the tools to document the results of that evaluation. All things that you've got to do in system design. So, overall, do you know what usability is and know some ways to actually go ahead and do the evaluation? And do you know why you're doing the evaluation itself? Okay? Do you understand the principles of usability in a way that you can actually use them to develop usability specifications and do the evaluation, evaluate the usability of a specific design? And if you've got some methods that you can work with, that you can use in this evaluation process. If you've got all those things together, you're ready to go out and do some real usability evaluation. This is one of the, and now we're kind of closing that loop on that entire design process. Design, prototype, and evaluate. We're going to go a little bit more depth into user evaluation, but we're getting there now. We're ready to start doing real designs, real prototypes, and real evaluations. Thank you very much. This is Dr. Ron England from Daytona State College, signing out.